the very nature of socialism is the concentration of political power in the state, and this always results in corruption, mass corruption. Indian socialism peaked between 1970 to 1980. However, the peak of corruption came much later, in 2004 to 2014, under the premiership of Manmohan Singh. This video is about the 7 grave sins of Manmohan Singh. Starting at number 7 is Manmohan Singh joining the Planning Commission. Central planning is like writing on moving water. It can never work. But this is the most egregious sin of Manmohan Singh. However, at that time when he joined the Planning Commission, he was a greenhorn, and that's why I'm going to put it at number 7. The Planning Commission made India poor to the point of starvation, and it is the gravest sin of the socialism. Coming at number 6 is Manmohan Singh's trying to please his own community, that are Sikhs. Now in 1984 there were these 6 riots, and many Sikhs were killed, between 2000 to 5000. The estimates vary. On behalf of the nation, Manmohan Singh did apologize to the Sikh community. That is not the sin. The sin was he also announced a pile of money to be distributed to the victims of the 1984 riots. Unfortunately, this whole thing turned out to be a big scam, and all the money was taken by the wrong people. It comes at number 6 because the amount in question is very small, but he eventually scammed his own community, and that is bad. This one is inexplicable. You can't understand why this happened. India was holding the Commonwealth Games, which was a prestigious thing for India, and that was a time for India to show the world that we could do a lot. However, what happened was he called Sunil Dutt over to his office in the evening and asked him to head the committee to look for overall charge of the games. Sunil Dutt agreed. Now Sunil Dutt had this stature, and he was a very honest person, and he could have done the job beautifully. And after signing all the acceptance papers, Sunil Dutt went back to his home in Mumbai. And at that point, the next day, Sunil Dutt finds out that a person called Suresh Kalmadi is made the chairman. After all that, Manmohan Singh selected a person whose credentials were very poor. The opposition parties were in arms against that. Everybody was willing to accept Sunil Dutt. So Commonwealth Games turned out to be a big scam, and everything was done very poorly. In the end, the army had to step in to make something out of it. What should have been a crowning glory for India turned out to be a disaster. This was his 5th. Coming at number 4 is the coal scam against India. Now, in the coal scam, Manmohan Singh was also the coal minister. Now, a coal mine in those days and even now is actually a gold mine, because the price of coal is way beyond the price of mining the coal. The price of mining the coal is just 1/3 to 1/4 the price of the coal that you get after you mine it, and that is the reason why coal mines are so precious. Now, these coal mines were given away to 49 different parties on a bond of 1000 rupees. And all these parties were suspect. Some of them were actually his own cabinet colleagues and party members. The whole thing was a scam. In the end, Supreme Court stepped in, and the licenses were cancelled, and the people who had taken those licenses, they were barred from future licenses. This was the number 4 because of the fact that this actually carried over a period of years, and Manmohan Singh defended this till the last, and this was a grievous scam against the people of India. and Manmohan Singh's reputation was shredded to bits because of this. And he actually, the papers relating to this coal scam disappeared from his office, and he gets up and he walks out of the Lok Sabha alone. Nobody walks up with him. That was a signal to him of his status. However, we come now to the third most grievous sin of Manmohan Singh is the 2G scam. Now, in the 2G scam, what happened was licenses for mobile communications were issued to selected parties, flouting all norms and regulations. In fact, there was a lot of manipulation on the way to that. The Supreme Court finally stepped in, cancelled all the licenses, and took severe action against the parties. Some of them had to pay huge fines. And there were three people who were actually primarily responsible for the scam. Obviously, Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister at that time. He should take the maximum blame. Then was A. Raja, who was the Communications Minister, under whom the licenses were being issued. And then there was P. Chidambaram. Now, on the eve of the actual scam taking place, there was a meeting in the Prime Minister's office where the three, that is Manmohan Singh himself, Mr. A. Raja, and Mr. Chidambaram, the Finance Minister, they were all there, and the decision was taken in the evening. In the next morning, it was carried out. This was, and it was done brazenly. Throughout the whole scam, there was a vigorous protest by the public, the newspapers, the media, and in the parliament. Everything was overlooked and the scam was given. Finally, the parties were asked to pay huge amounts of fine in this, and the whole thing was cancelled. Till the day the Supreme Court passed severe strictures against A. Raja, the evening before that, Manmohan Singh was defending his cabinet minister, who was obviously deep into the scam. In the end, however, there were no prosecutions. That's the worst part of the situation. Everybody was absolved of all crimes, but the sin remains. This is the number 3 sin of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Coming at number 2 is the inflation Manmohan Singh policies caused to India. Now, huge corruption also results in inflation. Inflation is very bad because the poorest of the poor suffer the most. In fact, the rich people actually benefit from inflation, and that's why this is his second most egregious sin. He claims to be a super economist, and yet his policies caused a tremendous amount of inflation and suffering amongst the poor. This is at number 2 because of the widespread harm it caused to the Indian public. Now we are going to shift to number 1, his most and the worst crime he committed against India. The worst and the most grievous crime that Manmohan Singh committed against India and Indians is he headed a kleptocracy, and he never tried to actually do anything about it. In his whole 10 years in office, nobody was prosecuted from his side. In fact, all the prosecutions were launched by the Supreme Court, and all the actions were taken by the Supreme Court, not by the Manmohan Singh. In fact, Manmohan Singh was always actually supporting these scamsters. This is the unfortunate part. Now, in his regime between 2004 and 2014, more or less every minister amassed huge fortunes. The richest people in India in those days were his cabinet ministers and his bureaucrats, and they virtually looted the company dry. The country was looted by these people dry, and he didn't do anything about it. This is his grievous sin, and it cannot be forgiven. Now, we have gone through the 7 sins. Actually, there are many more. If you start listing them, it will take hours and hours to finish. At this point, I finish this video. Thanks for listening, guys. This is Swami Vardhanand signing off.